Let's open our devices and listen now. Let's have some fun, and this is how. As we have our INC radio podcast playing, we will have so much fun listening. INC Radio Podcast, we're here to hear.
Hello, podcast family, and welcome to the 8th episode of our season, The Balance Blueprint Part 1. And you are tuning into INC Radio Podcast, the podcast that resonates with you. I am your host, LJ.
And Angelica, and this episode is a continuation of our season, The Balance Blueprint Part 1, which focuses on topics that involve balancing your personal, social, and academic life, because balance is a practice that is essential to develop, especially at a young age.
And last episode, we dove into our hobbies that have helped us to maintain school life balance. So today, it's a little bit different because we're delving into developing a well-rounded routine after a busy day at work or even at school. So today's topic is none other than life after the 9 to 5 shift. Ayan.
But of course, we want our podcast family to join in on the episode conversation too. So let's segue to our podcast episode question for today. As always, for all of our live viewers, please feel free to leave your answer in the live chat. And for those who will be viewing our lovely episode after it is aired, please feel free to share with us your response to our question at podcast@incradio.net. So for our podcast episode question for today, what is the most important part of your post-work routine? So after you get out of your shift from work, what is the most important part of that routine that you have after coming home from work?
Ayan. And now, before we head off to our main discussion, we'd like to give our special thanks to Ka Angelo Eranio V. Manalo, our Deputy Executive Minister. And most of all, we would like to thank our dearest Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. We love you so much, po. Ayan. So let's go to our topic discussion. Yeah. So again, our podcast question earlier that Angelica said is, what is the most important part of your post-work routine? So make sure you answer that in the live chat there, and we'd like to know, right? But our first question is basically, what does your typical evening look like after the 9 to 5? So just a little bit of, I guess, background for me and Ate Angelica. I am currently working at a full-time job. And what about you, Ate Angelica?
For me, I'm working full-time right now, but only for the summer. So I'm only working just for the summer, and then after the summer is over, I'm going back to starting my semester. So basically, I only have a summer job right now, but I actually do work 9 to 5. So I very much relate to this conversation.
Ayun. So typically, with at Angelica, she's gonna have a different so she's sort of shifted to a different kind of schedule, right? So she was going to university and now she's kind of working. So her 9 to 5 looks different now than it was a month ago or a few weeks ago. But for me, since I work at a full-time job, what does my evening typically look like after my work? Let me think, because usually I get off at exactly 5 o'clock, and usually it takes me about, let's say, 30 minutes to get home, give or take. So by the time I'm home, it's usually around 6 o'clock. So at that time, it's usually supper time already. So the first thing I do is get changed out of my clothes. I think that's very important when you come home, because you don't want to bring all that outside. So I think that's one of my pet peeves too, is like, make sure you change right when you get home. Don't sit in your work clothes. It also helps your transition when you get home. So usually I eat dinner is the first thing I do, because the last thing I would have eaten is during lunchtime. So I've had a good 5 to 6 hours already in between the next meal. Syempre, kain mo na. Halatang parating gutom.
You know what? For me, I'm hungry even throughout the day. I
Mm-mm.
get to the office, gutom na ako. Throughout the day, I
You
need to.
sit down in your desk, gutom ka.
Yeah, no, seriously. I've been snacking a lot, which is not like me at all.
Mm-hmm.
I used to never eat snacks. But I guess this relates to my answer to the question,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're a student, your schedule is a lot more flexible, and every
Yeah.
single semester my schedule changes depending on which what times my classes are, because sometimes I've had classes that are from 6:30 to 9 o'clock, so my day ends a lot later, but then I'll have other times during the day that I'll have more time, I guess, to rest, or more time for myself. But it's all really different and really varied, as opposed to when you're working a full-time job. um
You're restricted to a
yeah,
certain time, right?
yes, and also it's like it's consistent every single day.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a student, your schedule differs every single day. You have additional responsibilities, extracurricular activities, even after going through your classes. So your schedule's changing every day, as opposed to me now working 9 to 5. My schedule is pretty much the same every single day. I work
Mm-hmm.
in the city right now, so my commute in itself is about like an hour and a half. Just to get out of the city takes a while. Um, but I'm very fortunate um, to be living with my parents. And I will say that that's something I'm very grateful for, because I come home and I just eat dinner. It's not like I'm responsible for preparing the dinner,
Mm-hmm.
because I come home kind of late. I come home like 6:30 if there's really bad traffic, sometimes 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Yeah.
And I also get up really early for the next day. I'm usually awake by 5 in the morning. So
Yeah.
you really only have a couple hours to yourself, especially when you're
Mm-hmm.
working a 9 to 5 and consider commute time. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have that. You'll have a home cooked meal by the time you get home. I also live with my parents, so
Yeah.
it's nice to have, something that you're gonna come home to and you'll have dinner right away, right? To kind of replenish that energy that you
Mhm.
spent, commuting. Or like me, I don't commute very far from my workplaces, which is one of the things I'm fortunate with. But other than that, that definitely helps to kind of get push through to the rest of the evening, with the time that you have for yourself. But again, with that being said, but how do you stay motivated, to do anything even after a long work day? So I guess, yeah, one of my answers would be the food, just to replenish energy, right? Ikaw, Ate Angelica.
I think besides, of course, eating, because eating gives our bodies fuel. We definitely need that, because even though you're eating in the evening and it's the end of your day, sometimes there's things that we want to do to end our day that are for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we still need energy for those type of tasks. But I think for me, it's rewarding yourself. I think every single day is different. There are days that I wouldn't consider a long work day,
Mm-hmm.
just because maybe I had less work to do that day, or maybe my commute was not as bad, because there was less traffic. So when I'm talking about a really long work day where I get home late and I'm exhausted, I just like to reward myself with something, especially because when you're working, you're earning money, right? So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's only fair that from time to time you treat yourself. Don't go crazy, but buying yourself,
Reasonable,
yes,
right?
reasonable price. If you want to buy yourself something small to treat yourself, or whether it's food.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that I actually like to do even after a long day. I don't usually have too many long days, but there are days where, like what you said, right? You'll have a really exhausting day. It's really busy. Whether you work in an office or like me, I'm a healthcare worker, every day changes a lot, right?
Mhm.
You just never know what gets thrown in your day. And yeah, definitely rewarding yourself at the end of the day is definitely one of the things that also helps me to stay motivated. I know me and Ate Angelica are on our matcha phase right now. We're really into matcha right
Yeah,
now, like
very much.
strawberry matcha specifically. I know I am. So, and it's nice, right? To just have that little drink. And also, I usually would sip that throughout the evening as well as you're unwinding. And it also, what our third question is what small practices you help to decompress yourself mentally or physically is, sipping on some matcha. I know what I usually would do before, my days kind of got busy is, I would actually run after work. And I didn't realize how much physical activity helps you peak your energy even after a long days of work. Well, it depends. If I've really, really had a long day, I wouldn't go for a run. But usually on some easy days where I actually have a little extra time or I get off work a little earlier, some physical activity definitely helps. And especially summertime nowadays, right? During the winter time here, it's pretty harsh because all you can really do is after work is go home and stay warm inside. But now that the summer has come, and I'm sure even in the Philippines, right, even if it's when we have those mild temperatures, it's nice to get outside and just to enjoy, maybe going to a park or walk your dog or go for a walk. It's a nice way to kind of decompress. But ikaw, Ate Angelica.
Um, for me, how I decompress, honestly, I'm not saying that I don't shower. I'm saying that one of the small practices has that I would say that helps me to decompress is to shower.
Mm-hmm.
Like just taking that, especially because I work in the city where it's like you're always in contact with so many people, coming home and getting to shower and just taking time, and I consider that as like part of my self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Um Taking time to do those things to take care of yourself and your body is something that helps you to decompress. But
Mm-hmm.
another thing is, just because I work in the city, there's a lot to do in the city. And like you mentioned, um, now that it's a summertime, you can go and explore or even just do little things like going for a walk. And for me,
Mm-hmm.
I try um, to just do a little bit of exploring on the way back after.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to go to a new bakery or something, if I want to stop by somewhere to grab food or look at a cute bookstore or something like that, I try to do a little bit of exploring just so that way I decompress myself through doing something that I like to do, even if it's small or even if it's only for a short period of time.
Yeah. And I that also kind of transitions to another question that we had for as part of our main discussion was what helps you mentally transition from work you to real you after hours, which is like what I mentioned earlier. I like to get out of my work clothes right away. And not only because I work at a healthcare facility, but also even I'm sure at Angelica, what she said, right? She likes to take a shower after work. That's her way of kind of transitioning to oh, I'm done work now. And like what she said, she's interacted with so many people, and it's just nice to have that a little bit of alone time, and at least you're setting that boundary for yourself. Like for me, what I usually would say is that if I had a really stressful day, if I need to vent out with a coworker or a friend, I would only really have that short amount of time after work to talk about it. And then usually I would set myself up once I leave work premises or once I step foot in the house is out of anything like work stress related that goes out the door, that stays at work. It's one of the things that I want to make sure we set a boundary to. I know me and my mom, we work together at one of our clinics, so sometimes it's hard to transition from work to home because sometimes we'd still talk about work things, but usually our my dad is usually good at refereeing. It's like, hey, you're at home now, leave those stuff at work and you can worry about those things when you get to work again tomorrow, right? Because again, we don't want to revolve our life around work. And even I'm sure for corporate job, right, sometimes it's hard to transition if you work from home, right? You would need that designated space. And how does that go for you at Angelica when you're working from home? How do you kind of transition, because you're still at home but you work, so
Mhm.
how do you make that transition for you?
I think part of making that transition, what's really important is setting boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're working in corporate, especially how corporate America is, the culture. Um, it's a lot of the times there's not a strong separation between work and
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
personal life. Sometimes, especially me working now, you'll see that, there's employees that are still sending out emails at 10 p.m. And then you're thinking, okay, it's like after the workday, but they're still doing
Working.
stuff.
Yeah.
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 I think it's important. I I turn off my laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I did now this year that I didn't do last year was that I didn't connect my phone to
To
whatever,
the work.
to whatever software we were using, because let's just say I'm getting work calls
Mm-hmm.
connected to my phone, so that way I can't be reached on my phone. So on
Yeah.
the work day, I used to do that last year, but I figured I really need a stronger separation. And so not having that on my phone kind of creates this separation between my personal life and my work life.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like you can only reach me if my laptop is on. But if
Mm-hmm.
like completely shut it down right after the workday ends, I'm very big on ending the workday when I need to end the workday, rather
Mm-hmm.
than associating it with work that it needs to get done, because I want to make sure that I don't burn myself out and try to like force myself to keep working if it's already after your work hours. So it's like once it hits 5 o'clock, I'm done. I'm turning off
Mm-hmm.
the laptop. So that's one way that helps me to mentally transition. It's just like that process of closing your workday, so that way like it's time, it's you time right now, it's your personal time right now. And
Yeah.
a lot of it too is that so much of who we are um is connected to our faith. So when I spend my evenings doing things for my duties, that's definitely a way that mentally transitions me from work to who I am. um because that's something that I do that's very big about my personal life. That's a huge part of my personal life. And so when I'm doing things that that are tied very closely to my identity outside of work, that's something that helps me to mentally transition.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you make a point with the, having, having your laptop closed. I know nowadays, there's a lot of, I feel like people are more aware now. And also a lot of workplaces also encourage you to have, separate devices for things outside of work. I know my uncle, he works a corporate job, and, sometimes he does have to have two phones with him throughout the day. He has the luxury of, working from home, but he has two phones where it separates his personal life to his work phone, so that, again, right, when you're having that transition, is that your boundary, that once you turn off your that cell phone that you have designated for work, or your laptop that's designated for work, that is your end of your work day, and that's where that's it, right? You'll have that you time, and it's nice to have that boundary. And once you learn that boundary, I think it's a lot easier to kind of transition to what you have to do at the evening time, right? Whether you're resting, or whether you're catching up with friends or your family, it's a nice boundary to have in order for you to really transition and be able to enjoy the rest of the evening that you'll have. Because sometimes, right, let's say like me and Ate Angelica, we get home at 6 or 7 in the evening. Usually the next day you'd have to get up early, and really I try to be in bed by at least 11 o'clock, or be asleep at least by 11:30. So you really only have 3 to 4 hours to yourself, right? And you'll have a to-do list where you still need to make your meals for the next day, like your baon or your lunch or whatever, or you still need to prepare for the next work day. You only really have 3 to 4 hours to yourself, so make the most out of it. Make sure you're finding yourself, doing the hobbies you like, or even, the last 2 hours of your night before you go to bed could be just your own time, right? You're doing your hobbies, you're, doing your self-care, you're doing your skincare and stuff like that, or you're watching a movie, or doing your hobbies. And then the first 2 hours of when you get home is for, preparing for the next day, or catching up with friends. You can always have a schedule of what you like to do, and the to-do list that you like to do. um but yeah, those are, I think, small things that you can do. But what other small things do you like to do for your evening at Angelica, to kind of enjoy what else you have going on for the rest of the evening before actually going to bed?
I think that because I get up so early, there's not too much time in
Mm-hmm.
between to really do something. Um, so I would say watching an episode
Mm.
of a show that I like, because it also gives me something to look forward to for when I come home.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is what I like, so I'm giving myself an 30 minutes to 1 hour to do this one thing that's
Yeah.
myself that I'm excited about.
I love that. And again, I like what you said, that you have something to kind of look forward to. But we're pretty much almost ending towards the end of our show, and it's a lot of work life transition and all that stuff. But what does our role of our faith play in all of this when it comes to developing a well-rounded routine throughout the day? One of the things that Angelica had mentioned, right? She performs her duty to kind of taper into transitioning at the evening after work. I know one of the things that we like to do in our family as well is, every Friday, we have activities in the church where we can actually go look forward to. Like the last few weeks, we had an esports event where, we just played video games in the chapel. And at the same time, every Friday in our locale, we actually have also a chapel guarding. So that's one of the things the brethren also look forward to. And again, like what I said earlier, the weather is getting nicer, and it encourages a lot of the brethren to go to the chapel, to be able to care for the chapel. We also do a little bit of cleaning for the house of worship, just to kind of also freshen up the place as well, right, to prepare for the weekend worship service. So it's a nice way to I know to transition, is definitely attending activities inside the church. Ikaw at Angelica.
I think I would say the same thing. I think a lot of it too is because those are things that we enjoy, and also being involved in those type of things gives us time to socialize with other people as well, and that social aspect is something that we could look forward to.
Exactly. And then, a lot of the activities that the church administration approves is, things for the Kadiwa, or even like, if you're someone who works a full-time job, right? Like what I said, we had an esports activity. Those are some things that you enjoy, playing board games with other brethren. There's also lots of activities during the weekend that you can also attend to, that will also help kind of transition yourself to your evening, for after work. But we're pretty much towards the end of our show, and we're gonna pretty much kind of go into our Christian value takeaway. At Angelica, if you want to start off the first half of it.
So, for our Christian value takeaway, as Christians, maintaining balance after the 9 to 5 isn't just about unwinding or checking off to do lists. It's also about using that time intentionally with purpose and discipline that honors God. Life after work offers a sacred space to reconnect not only with ourselves and our loved ones, but most importantly with our Almighty God, who continuously gives us strength. It's a time to rest, pursue passions, or simply be still, but above all, it's an opportunity to engage in practices that nourish our faith and draw us closer to Him.
And when we face burnt out, stress, or even temptation to simply numb out after a long day, we can always lean on God's strength and guidance. And His wisdom helps us to discern what our evenings truly need. And by trusting in Him, caring for ourselves with intention, and aligning our time with His purpose, our evenings can become not just restorative, but also spiritually uplifting. And as we wrap up today's episode, we'd like to also give thanks to you, our lovely listeners. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode today, and we hope to see you in our next episode, so that we can all keep growing in our faith, one INCRadio podcast at a time.
And as always, we would love to hear from all of you. So please reach out to us for any comments, questions, or suggestions via email at podcast@incradio.net, because here on INC Radio Podcast,
We're here to
here.
Thank you, everyone who's there in the live chat at the moment. Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy Saturday, Nana. Happy Friday here. Thank you, Peter.
Let's open our devices and listen now. Let's have some fun, and this is how. As we have our INC radio podcast playing, we will have so much fun.
much.
Listen in. INCRadio podcast. We're here to hear. Let's open our devices and listen now. Let's have some fun, and this is how. As we have our INC radio podcast playing, we will have so much fun listening.